Fernando stands at the legal forefront of the fight to protect the wild horses and burros as Director of Law and Policy for American Wild Horse Conservation. He leads critical efforts in both litigation and legislative advocacy. With a background in environmental science and law degree specializing in environmental law, Fernando brings both technical expertise and strategic insight to the complex challenges facing public lands and wild equids. His work ensures that protections for wild horses are not just promised, but enforced through the power of law and policy.
Good morning. I hope everybody had some coffee because a lot of the slides look like this. I know there's been a lot very deep and it's a lot of law. So I also want to start off by just saying, my intention here is to inform. There are a lot of nuances and opinions about a lot of these different issues and laws that I'm going to go over. But I think having the information is sometimes the most important thing so that people can make up their mind about what they think. So for me, one of the most important things about wild horses is that they are among the most unique animals. They have special legislation that recognizes their value far beyond livestock or any other kind of monetary value. What you see highlighted here, this is in the Wild Horses and Burros Act. That's not the legal name of it, but I'm just shorthanding it. And as you can see, living symbols. These are terms that you don't see often from the legislature. These are historic and pioneer spirit of the West. I mean, it's almost poetic. But I really think that this is a very important context for the work that we do. From my perspective, the most important thing about wild horses in terms of advocacy in a more general sense is to really elevate them to the place of a bald eagle or some other animal that is revered not only for its beauty and sort of majesty, but also for its symbolic representation of the country itself. I want to start off with some good news, which is we have been working along with others to basically get a more unified position from congressional offices on wild horses. We have been fortunate enough to have the first Congressional Wild Horse Caucus. We had a reception for wild horses a couple weeks ago on Capitol Hill as well. From my perspective, this shows sort of an increasing concern over this issue. I put the co-chairs of the caucus here. There are a couple of things that I think are noteworthy. First, it's a bipartisan issue. The co-chairs are from both parties. The other thing that I think is noteworthy is there's even a geographic spread. And while it's most relevant to Western politicians, you see here we have Tennessee and Wisconsin.
Go ahead.
I thought maybe somebody was behind me. So this is the mission statement of the caucus. I urge you as well to, as Linda and others have discussed, reaching out to your representatives, whether they're in the House or the Senate, to join. I think we have about 9 members right now. Certainly would like to grow that. They actually already have taken some action. Last year, we worked with them to send a letter to Secretary Burgum, sort of asking for reform. So this is certainly a way, at least, of unifying the voices of Congress. And one of the things that I think is noteworthy as well, they are the Bureau of Land Management's bosses. And so they are the ones who tell them what they can and cannot do and grant them authority to manage wild horses and burros. I also, in general, will just say it is good to engage in the process of government by reaching out to your representatives, as Linda was saying. Call them, take 5 minutes to call them. Because ultimately, if we don't voice our opinions, they won't know what they are. So sale authority is something that has become a bigger and bigger concern. There was the end of the AIP program, I believe, was discussed prior. I won't get into the details unless anybody wants me to. But unfortunately, what we're seeing is sort of a shift in what the agency does to use sale authority instead to, as they see it, get rid of the horses that they have to manage, unfortunately. Among the biggest issues that we've been noticing are massive increases of sales. And I should have put burros in here as well, so apologies. Including to individuals, where there's really no clarity as to what they plan on doing with just an excessive number of horses. And further complicating things is online sales and also just massive listings of horses when they're being sold. And I'll go into a little bit more detail as to how that is creating a bigger and bigger problem. So the Burns Amendment, there's the very exciting citation of what it looks like in the act. This is the text of the act, and noteworthy is the fact that there are some requirements for an animal to be sold without limitation, which means in the end that the agencies don't care what you do with the horses, basically. So the first limitation is the excess animal is more than 10 years of age. And the second one is that the excess animal has been offered unsuccessfully for adoption at least 3 times. And this is really where the online sales and massive listings are creating sort of a real big, even legal issue from my perspective, which is they're listing just so many horses that they know there isn't going to be a demand for immediately. As a result, the vast majority of them are going to get a strike on the 3 times. So ultimately, this basically read even that requirement out of the law, because the purpose of this, and I'm not praising the Burns Amendment to be clear, was to at least create some kind of process where there was a good faith attempt to offer the horse for adoption. But when you're just listing massive numbers of them and you know they're not, majority of them are not going to be adopted, you're sort of making this language superfluous. So that from a legal perspective is a real no-no. So from my perspective, I just wanted to sort of explain how I see this interacting and why the agency is sort of engaging in this practice. This is the second part of the Burns Amendment, just so everyone knows. And then there's the sale without limitation. As you can see, there's quite a bit of discretion and very little oversight in what the agency is permitted to do through the act. So one of the solutions that we see, or one of the things that would, not solutions, I shouldn't say that, but one of the things that would really help would be the SAFE Act. It has much broader implications, obviously, with domestic horses, etc. But as it relates to wild horses and burros, we really see this as a way of de-incentivizing these massive sales. And the reason is, this is what the act looks like. And so I just wanted to walk through basically what the act says, because a lot of times you'll see an act and this is what it says, right? It's amending 7 U.S.C. 2160. That's a lot of fun, right? Just to read something like that. But when you look at 7 U.S.C. 2160, this is what it looks like right now. And so what would be happening here is that you would be adding equines, as you can see there. And importantly, it will prohibit knowingly slaughtering for human consumption, as well as shipping, transporting, moving, delivering, receiving, possessing, purchasing, selling, or donating. So, and then in addition, this law, as it is already enacted, has a penalty. And so that would de-incentivize sort of this practice that's been happening of shipping horses through the pipeline. So now we'll move on to appropriations. This is where we do the majority of our work actually on the legislative side. I'm going to start off with what is currently in the Appropriations Act in FY26, which is this is a prohibition on slaughter. Unfortunately, in the proposed budget for FY27, which is currently what Congress is working on, it's removed this prohibition. There's also a provision that we saw for the first time, I think it was last year, that seeks to expand transfer authority. As you can see, I highlighted here that what the agency would like is authority to immediately on the request of an approved foreign country to transfer wild horses and burros. The exact purpose of that is not clear to me personally. However, it is alarming because that is a lot of discretion and there would probably be very little oversight in what exactly was happening there. So we are currently working to try to get the prohibition put back into appropriations and have this removed, as well as having those prohibitions on slaughter reincorporated into any transfer authority that the agency has through appropriations. Now, there's some, this was not, I believe, on the description of what I was going to talk about, but I like to be very rebellious, so.
That's good.
We just talk about EJAO a little bit. I had the pleasure of lobbying this issue with our partners over at Animal Welfare Institute, as well as Work USA. This is actually from the Act, and it's the findings of Congress that they would like to be incorporated into the prohibitions on the sale of EJAO. The reason I put it here was because I think it's a pretty good context for what EJAO is, why it's a problem. I won't read all of it, but I urge you to look up the bill if you want to see. There's even more information in the findings. It is really upsetting that the United States is actually the third largest importer of this product. Other countries, as you'll see, other countries, and including the European Union, have outlawed it, and this year Brazil as well has outlawed the slaughter of donkeys. And this is actually a global crisis, and even for the wild burros that live in the United States, with such a market and so much demand for this product, it's very alarming that they're going to start getting pulled into this system, especially with the issues that we see with sale authority, et cetera. Oops. And then, so the last thing I wanted to just touch on, this is the Wild Horse and Burro Protection Act of 2025. This is a bill that was introduced by Nina Titus. What it seeks to do is to have a phased elimination of helicopter removals over 2 years. And importantly, also has a requirement for use of cameras on the aircraft that are used to do the removals, because transparency is really one of the biggest issues we face in trying to advocate in this space. And then finally, it requires a report to Congress that would sort of look for and document, sort of searching for other humane methods of doing removals that don't include aircraft. And that is the presentation that I have. Certainly let me know if there are any questions, or if anybody wants to heckle me, that's also fine.
Some might have, no.
It's okay.
You know, sometimes when you file a lawsuit and throw spaghetti on the wall just because you're looking for information, not pointed in a direction. So just to give you additional information about the cell authority, what they call the definition of a cell authority, horse or burro, that 3 times and over 10, they say that's their shall requirement, right? but that they maintain the discretion to label any horse sale authority at any time. So I've seen, the rancher down the road who's a buddy pull up and get two foals, sale authority. So they say that they have that discretion, so that when but we've also seen them take that 17-year-old stallion that Advocacy loves, and they put an adoption on the internet auction so that it'll go 25,000. So even there, they're not sticking with that shall requirement. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there, that they say they have under the Wild Horse and Burro Act, they have the discretion to basically make any horse sell at any time.
I appreciate the context, and the BLM not following the law is not really that strange to me.
Yeah. So just if you ever put it in a brief, that's what they're gonna say. So that just gives you additional information.
I appreciate it.
I have a quick question. On the requirement for cameras on aircraft, because I've been at roundups and a lot of times the helicopters are facing away from where the horses are. I think that's something that to tie into that would be if there's GPS coordinates that would be made available to the public, because then we could see how far the horses are actually moved and where they're moved, and that would be more beneficial to addressing issues at. So, and a lot of those cameras do have GPSs, so I think it would be an easy add-on.
Absolutely, that's a great point. I hadn't considered that, but it makes a lot of sense. Absolutely.
Could you repeat the questions? We're not hearing them back here.
Yeah, and if you stand up when you talk, that kind of helps.
Yeah, I had a question about the helicopter removal versus bait trapping, and I wonder where your organization is about this summer, and the number of horses they're looking at. It looks like there's mostly contracts with helicopter removals. What's the balance of removals by helicopter versus bait trapping, and what do you see your volunteers doing this summer that support your organization that will be helping to be eyes on the ground and to kind of find out, what's going to be happening?
Real quick, I'll let him answer this, but he's talking about policy and stuff. Patricia's going to talk a little bit later, and she's going to probably be able to address some of those, so I don't want to take
I was
away
just curious about his organization.
Well, I know,
since
he's with
volunteer for it.
AWHC, and she's here too, so.
Thank you.
But no, she can answer that one, but as far as the questions for their organization, please let's hold off on that. He's a great opportunity to have policy questions and dealing with engagement, so, okay, there you go.
Thank you.
Sure. Patricia probably would.
No, I know Patricia. I'll talk to Patricia.
All right.
I appreciate it.
So what is the status of the SAFE Act? Did that pass or not pass? And there is other language that really had to be updated other than equine. It should read, not just for human consumption, but for no pet food, no zoo food. And the skins of horses are also used for leather and leather products, etc. Can that language be inserted?
So it has not passed. It does have a lot of co-sponsors, which is good news. I also am aware of what you're discussing because the term consumption is not well defined. And it's not well defined even within the broader statutory framework. So it is something to be concerned about because it certainly could be interpreted as, well, only if humans are eating it, right? Which is different than, like you said, other products and like the commercial products, even dog food or like you said. I did not draft it, but I do think it's something that if it does need to be reintroduced, it's something that I think needs to be addressed and kind of looked at more in detail.
Can that possibly be statewide instead of federal?
Yeah, that's what Britta was saying, they're working on the same.
Yeah, the SAFE Act is dead. Yeah, it didn't get it did get into Rules Committee, but Rules Committee did not roll the SAFE Act in order. So at least it didn't get moved into Rules Committee. Rules Committee didn't roll it in order. Rules Committee did pass the Farm Bill out of Rules Committee, going to the floor for a vote. So the SAFE Act is gone for the term.
She has a question for Lynn.
Yes, hi. I have a question on the wild horse caucus, it's actually a two-part question. One, can you publish and update us periodically on who has joined? One, we would like to thank our members who have joined, because I think that's real important. And another, if they haven't joined, we want to encourage them to join. But I think the whole Wild Horse Caucus thing is very important, and I was so happy to see that. Because once they get together and start talking, things happen. And then the other question is, will it ever include the Senate? Because as we've seen with the SAFE Act, it always gets through the House with 230 plus co-sponsors, and then it dies in the Senate, and it isn't even heard. So are you ever going to include senators?
So, the membership, you can find it online, usually Legistorm, if you Google it or search online, like, what is the membership, sometimes they'll list it, may not be totally up to date. You can certainly start sort of disclosing that as part of our organization as well, in terms of what membership we have. We have reached out actually to Senate offices. We've not been able to get a senator. The Senate is tough on this issue. I will say that it is a congressional, it's it's not a House committee. For that reason, we were hoping to be able to also include senators in the caucus.
I just want you to know, I did Google it and I couldn't find a list of members.
Okay.
Real quick, wait a second. On that, also, if you guys are gonna do that, it'd be great if maybe we target some people, like if you're having a hard time, if we can find a constituent to go in on that individual person that you'd like to join. Some of them have more clout or better position.
Absolutely, thank you, Linda.
Thanks for your presentation. Could you give us some idea about what your lobbying obstacles are, especially on the SAFE Act, I imagine it's the big ag lobby. On the Jail Act, who are we up against?
So, it is not really opposed, and I think the bigger issue becomes to some degree, getting attention to it. There are a lot of things going on in the world. There's a lot of priorities that people have. Unfortunately, at times, this isn't the highest priority. From a more technical standpoint, the bill was referred to a lot of committees, which makes it very difficult to pass because that means it's going to get scrutinized in all those committees. And so I think that also probably chilled some of the enthusiasm about it. However, I will say that it is difficult to oppose the EJAO Act directly. What would you be saying? I want to kill donkeys so that we can make gelatin that has no medicinal value. So I think from my perspective, the messaging on that bill is very strong. I'm hoping that maybe moving forward, it can sort of get a little more attention, because I think maybe that's one of the harder places to sort of get traction for it, is just getting more attention, and hopefully it doesn't get referred to as many committees. A previous version of it was actually only referred, I think, to one committee, and so if we can get kind of back to a place like that, it may actually get a little bit more footing.
Because the China connection, I know at least they remember AWI has felt that the China connection would be a strong motive to getting something done.
It is, and I think you raise a good point there as well, which is not all legislators care about animals, or horses, or donkeys or anything. So sometimes coming in with other arguments, we certainly use fiscal arguments, for example, with wild horses and burros when we're advocating. And that's another one, which is, are we really going to let bad actors in another country sort of dictate what we're doing here and how we're not protecting our donkeys?
Can you speak to where exactly in the process this Wild Horse and Burro Protection Act and the EJAL Act are? Are they in front of committees right now? Are they about to go before the full House? Are they just ideas at this point? Where exactly are they?
Unfortunately, they're not really moving. I think I think that it's something that is to some degree a messaging and sort of unifying call, but to to answer your question, they're not really moving.
Well, this to me is what is so frustrating, because the Wild Horse Caucus, what exactly are they doing? Who's in charge? Is it Congress or the BLM? Because the BLM is moving straight ahead. They're gonna wipe out the rest of the horses within another year. I mean, what do we need to do here? Congress is not acting according to mine. Am I gonna call the White House on Monday and make phone calls? Is that what I'm gonna do? Because Congress is not effective. They're not. They're on
Is
vacation.
there a question?
I mean, it's very, very frustrating.
I agree with you.
BLM is just moving straight ahead.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you.
I'm calling on Trump on Monday and I'll give you his phone number.
That's perfect.
Good morning. Question on your appropriations section. I believe the first bullet was regarding the Raw Hill Rider. Is that correct? No, that wasn't it. Wait. There was something about, you had something about slaughter being removed from the. Okay, so it is the proposed budget, and it says removes long-standing prohibitions on slaughter. This is the proposed budget. This hasn't gone to Congress and whatnot.
They're still working on it now.
Right, so when I first saw this last year, I was very upset and did some research, and it looks like it's never in the proposed budgets. No president has ever added it into the proposed budget. It's something that is added as the Rahel Rider by Congress later. So we should still be contacting our congressmen and make sure that they know that we want that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and absolutely, because while it is added, if it wasn't, it would be pretty catastrophic in terms of
Absolutely.
the authority that it would give the agency.
Absolutely. I just didn't want, because I panicked because people say it's been removed, but it truly hasn't been removed unless Congress doesn't add it later. Am I understanding that correctly?
Right.
Okay.
I meant in relation to the FY26, which it is in. So
Right.
This is FY27, which is being worked on. Yeah.
So it was in I thought it was not in any proposed budget ever.
Oh no! The final 26.
I see.
Yeah,
Yes. Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you for the
No
clarification.
problem at all.
Any other questions?
Yeah, one more question,
It's going to be the hardest one, isn't
this is probably looking forward to after the November elections, but, for FY 28. But
Hold your mic closer.
could there be an effort to get out of the committee, the Appropriations Committee report language, what comes from the path forward? That is, tying the appropriations to meeting AML. Because it seems to me that's a big black flag.
I mean, I think that there's always a chance to sort of have a modification. I would be speculating a bit. I certainly I understand what you're saying. I think one thing to remember about report language as well is that it is sort of guidance as well. It's not always enforceable, which is certainly something that is very irritating to us at times because we'll work really hard to get something in report language, and if there's any discretion, the agency's not going to do it. So I think it's something to definitely keep in mind. I know the reference you're talking about as well, and it is just an ugly reminder, I think, for me personally, in terms of what the agency sees as the guidance that's being given to some degree by Congress.
Any other questions?
Just one last question. I'm just curious, we're all interested in following your work and the legislation moving forward. Do you offer any calls or regular updates on these kinds of things outside of conferences? Because we take part, like for example, in Safe Act calls that are offered bi-weekly, and I think other calls on these topics would be very, very helpful to keep constituents, advocates, up to date so that they can, support the work you're trying to make happen?
I think it's a great question. We do not do that, but we probably should. From my perspective, it's important because as an organization or as an individual, I can only do so much. It requires others.
No, we're here.
Yeah.
Hi, I was just noticing on the proposed budget for fiscal year 27, you have emphasized an approved foreign country. Why?
This is a new language that has been proposed, I think, the last couple of years, and it's honestly the intent is not particularly clear, but it is kind of alarming because if we feel that we have very little control or oversight right now, if horses were to be transferred to another country, I mean, we would be in a whole new mess of jurisdiction and transparency, and it's a push to also expand the authority of the agency to have more power to transfer the horses and burros that are holding.
Just to clarify that, where did that language come from? Did it come out of committee, like ag committee, or where did the actual approved foreign country come from?
So it's been in the proposed budget, which is sometimes called the president's budget. It's what the agency works on with within the executive to sort of tell Congress what they want in appropriations.
That makes sense.
So when I see that language, what really scares me about that is that could be live horses like Canada does with their horses. They ship them live in containers to Japan. And so that could open us up for that. Or it could be sending horse meat, or it could be, and I think the argument there is that the European Union banned receiving horse meat from this country in 2015. They want no part of our horse meat. We don't send our horse meat to any other country. Mexico sends it to South America. That's it. Brazil doesn't take it. Brazil has outlawed horse slaughter recently. Burros. Italy has submitted a bill into Parliament that ends horse slaughter there. There's nowhere for our live horses and burros to go. So is there an argument to be made to appropriations about this language here is a dead end? Nobody wants our equine. I mean, I don't know.
Real quick to add on to that, several years ago, Russia wanted a bunch of our wild horses. They were going to start a big cat preserve, and they wanted the horses to live on the land and be basically their game. So it was not going to be a good situation for the horses. So there's a lot of bad things that can happen.
And that's why it's so scary, because all the things that you all are talking about exactly with that vague authority, they would definitely exercise it if they could.
Yeah, we probably have time for one more question. Okay.
Okay, me, thank you. I'm kind of words are important, as we all know, and one of the words that catches me is approved. Who's approving and what are they approving? What are their approval status? How do they define who's an approved individual? An approved foreign country? Are those already defined?
Let me know if you have the answers, because I think that's the problem, And what that means from a legal perspective is broad discretion. Basically, what you think, that's what it's going to be.
Thank you so much.